long ago deserved someone to finally put this golden child in his place. This usually meek girl showed her strong character for the first time, and Henry realized that after his rebirth, life had changed a lot. It was funny to watch her courage, but Henry would have managed on his own if she hadn't intervened. But Henry himself wanted to show his strength, and it seems that now his time has finally come. Without a word, he hit the scoundrel with his hand, answering for all the girls whose underwear he had stolen. The blow was without mana, but the boy felt all of Henry's strength and had no chance to dodge or respond. Suddenly, in front of everyone, the very same underwear of Jean's that had disappeared in the morning, the one she had accused him of stealing, fell out of Charlie's mouth. It was a disgusting sight, but Jean was most interested in why Charlie had stuffed her underwear into his mouth. Standing behind, Sophia couldn't understand if this guy had gone crazy, or if his thirst for revenge was so strong that he was ready to hide underwear even in his mouth. Only the immortal spirit was not laughing, because his young ward was again wasting his divine power on abominations, and not on saving the world. Unable to bear the chaos, the teacher loudly announced that all offenders would be sent to the disciplinary committee for punishment. It was clear that there was no point in arguing with Michelle, because she was rarely angry, and it was difficult to predict the punishment from an enraged woman. Charlie's greatest fear was a committee of seniors who would take out their anger on him at the first opportunity. And now, having calmed down, he raised his hands and began to swear to the teacher that he was innocent and that he had been set up. And then he pointed to the one who had staged this dirty scene to make him look guilty and ruin his reputation, simply because of his wealth. But leaning towards him, Henry replied with a smile that punishment could not be avoided, and that he should simply accept the bad luck of that day. Then he suddenly suggested to Michelle that she should exclude this scoundrel from the group, because such a shameless student should not study at their prestigious academy. Realizing what was going on, Charlie loudly asked his accomplice Agatha to confess that together they had planted the underwear and money on Henry to accuse him of theft. But the girl said that he himself offered her 100,000 for a lie about Henry, and all this time Charlie was simply jealous of him because of Sophia. This revelation shocked all the students and the teacher, who, although she had expected something like this, did not know what to answer. Many students knew that Charlie and his friends hated Henry and deliberately made him an outcast at the academy, whom everyone made fun of. It seems that this time the guys managed not only to fight off the onslaught, but also to win. And it was Sophia who showed character at an important moment. And then her face suddenly changed, and she seriously told Henry that after this funny joke, they needed to think about more important things. After all, things were just starting to gain momentum, and after what happened, Charlie definitely won't give up trying to set Henry up again. However, he said that he was not afraid of the scoundrel and his stupid friends, and that next time he would show him some tricks to discourage Charlie from getting involved. Sophia had never heard such words from a friend and was surprised that the guy seemed to become a completely different person in one day. Now, the students who had previously been afraid of Charlie could loudly celebrate Henry's victory, having taught this annoying boy a lesson for the first time. In his past life, only Henry was responsible for Sophia's death due to weakness. So now that he has a second chance, he intends to act differently. Then a monster from an ancient tribe invaded the academy without warning, taking the students and teachers by surprise. The monster was weak, but even against it the students were unable to use their abilities to avoid their sad fate. The teachers shouted loudly for the students to run, but the monster was already preparing to throw a magical projectile with strong, destructive energy at them. And then something terrible happened, and the shot hit the thick of the crowd, from where the mutilated bodies of the unfortunate students flew in all directions. Never in his life will Henry forget that terrible day when he, along with all the other students, tried to escape. But the moment he found himself at the shell crater, he suddenly saw something that changed him forever. Right in the middle of the road, he saw the bloody body of Sophia, who died in the attack of monsters, and he was still unable to do anything. It is difficult to imagine the pain of the young man at the sight of the death of his closest girl, and all he could do was stand and accept his terrible fate. Meanwhile, the academy building was burning, and the monsters continued their attacks, mercilessly destroying everyone without resistance. That terrible scene from the past seemed to still stand before Henry's eyes, but now he felt a different strength and was not ready to accept his fate. In his new life, he wanted to put an end to the monsters once and for all, rewriting his fate and the lives of all the people who died that day. True, all his bright intentions were interrupted by the teacher, who noticed the student's overly bold behavior towards one of the best students. She demanded that he immediately take his hands off Sophia, but the guy replied that they had known each other for a long time and were close enough to hide it. But Michelle looked at them sternly and promised Sophia personal protection if she even hinted at the need for it. However, the girl replied with a smile that she did not need such protection, and agreed with every word of her best friend. It was quite brave of her, and the students saw the modest girl like this for the first time, realizing that she had grown up imperceptibly. But for some reason, deep down she knew that her relationship with Henry could only be a cover, because no one knew her true thoughts. Suddenly, one of the students loudly declared that Henry was simply using the poor girl for his own purposes, and he intended to deal with it personally. But from Henry's look, it was clear that the student had better not interfere if he wanted to leave here in one piece. It seemed that luck was on the side of idiot Henry today, but his eternal rival Charlie was sure that it would not last long. Pulling the pen out of his bloody hand, he promised that Henry would have to hide behind his friend's skirt, but they would meet when she was not around. He then vowed not to rest until everyone saw Henry's true colors, and he was expelled from the elite academy. At first, it might have seemed like empty threats, but soon Charlie was quick to take on his offender in earnest. To this end, he set out to find one of the academy's strongest students, who had been held back a year for bad behavior. Having found him and told his story, he heard in response that this plan was a waste of time, although the guy could easily carry out such an assignment. Only Vincent, that was the guy's name, was surprised that fragile Sophia had offended Charlie so much that he was ready to take revenge on her and her friend. But Charlie didn't engage in long conversations, but took out a suitcase with money and was ready to pay for their future deal right then and there. He offered Vincent $500,000 to kill Henry and capture Sophia, with whom the guy also wanted to have a serious talk. In response, Vincent stated that he would have to pay more for this order, since the student had done no harm, and he would have to sacrifice his conscience. For the first time, Charlie heard the big guy talk stupidly about conscience, and sternly asked how much he would charge for completing this order. Without thinking twice, Vincent demanded $800,000, promising that Henry would disappear and Sophia would crawl to Charlie on her knees. However, he then suddenly added that only the first part of the night would go to Charlie, and the second half he would have to give to him. At the same time, during the break, Henry went to the academy garden, thinking about the incident that happened in class today. Lying sprawled on a stone bench, he was once again convinced that this world was ugly and beautiful at the same time, especially in such weather. But the immortal spirit warned him not to act so recklessly, because Charlie had a hot temper and would create a lot of trouble. According to Taoist teachings, quarrels should be avoided, and Henry was not yet strong enough to fight strong opponents. Hearing this, the guy immediately jumped up from his seat and declared that he stood up not only for himself, but also for the other guys. It may have sounded childish, but Henry was confident that after his rebirth, rivals like Charlie would no longer be a threat to him. In response, the spirit remembered how one stupid monkey was always asking for trouble, and he had to teach her a good lesson. The guy immediately joked, imagining how he punished this monkey and, as usual, made a dirty joke. But seriously speaking, after being reborn, Henry really did lose his magic, and his body is now no better than that of a mere mortal. Of course, the immortal spirit had to teach him the basics of cultivation, although after today's incident, he didn't really want to. After all, when the monster appears on Earth again, he will be much stronger than Charlie and any student, so only Henry will be able to stop him. But the guy didn't want to wait that long, and was sure that he would get his skills back much faster than the spirit thought. However, without the knowledge of the immortal spirit, the guy will not be able to master the most powerful techniques, and will not use mana to its full potential. Then Henry suddenly interrupted him, and loudly shouted those magic words that were supposed to reveal to him the art of chaos and awaken hidden powers. And the next moment, a whirlwind of wind swirled around him, and it was unclear how he was able to turn on his ability. It was clear that the guy did not know how to absorb the spiritual energy of nature. But for some reason it suddenly responded to his call. He really did make the earth and air obey him, and it seemed as if the elements were waiting for him to call them to service. This effect was only achieved by the ability of the primordial chaos, and this was the first time the immortal spirit had seen something like this. He couldn't understand how such power came to be in the hands of an ordinary young man who had just recently been reborn in a new body. Meanwhile, the guy sat in the same pose, and it seemed that he had merged with the world around him, being in two spaces at once. Then he suddenly opened his eyes and announced that the first stage of creating the foundation was completely completed. But the spirit, looking at him, still did not believe that in just 10 minutes some boy had passed the first stage of development. But even if he managed to perform such a miracle, the immortal spirit warned that with the body of a mortal, he still would not be able to defeat the aliens. In this case, all that was left was to continue what had been started, and Henry, once again calling upon the energy of nature, was ready to further accelerate the restoration of his strength. Immediately after this, all the students on the academy's sports ground saw a huge whirlwind, as if a funnel was moving towards them. Even the spirit, who was not threatened by the tornado above his head, was frightened when he saw what this strange boy was up to. It turned out that with the help of the immortal spirit and its energy, the guy was awakening his powers so quickly that the spirit demanded that he stop immediately. He then spread his arms out to the sides, ready to further enhance his magic sleeve's ability by calling upon the energy of the mountains and rivers for strength. The wind there seemed to rise so strong that it blew away even the immortal spirit, although it did not have a physical body and was only an image. However, everyone else easily noticed the approaching whirlwind, and Jimmy was seriously scared looking at it. It seemed to him as if God himself had appeared to people and was ready to send heavenly punishment, because it could not be explained otherwise. At some point, Jimmy realized that he had accidentally screamed so loudly that he might have seemed like the most cowardly guy in the academy. And although the whirlwind was very strong, it was worth calming down at least a little. Otherwise, tomorrow everyone would find out what a coward he turned out to be. Looking closely at the silhouette right in the center of the huge tornado, Sophia suddenly realized that it seemed very familiar to her. It was hard to believe, but it seemed that it was the silhouette of her friend that was hanging in the air in the center of the funnel, and it was hard to believe her eyes. Michelle also noticed this silhouette in the sky, and was surprised that a student with such talent had been studying at their academy all this time. She was going to find out which of her students had such power, but first, she just had to survive this horror. The tornado was visible even from the settlement near the Imperial Palace, located tens of kilometers from the academy. Looking at this from the balcony of the palace, the Empress realized that only a true genius of cultivation could control such a destructive force. In a short time, Henry went through 3 difficult stages of development. But first he formed his mana and the most destructive spells. Then he had to cleanse his soul, and at this stage, all the accumulated magical power soon strengthened his body. The 3rd stage was a return to the eternal, thanks to which he quickly remembered the mistakes of the past and in minutes gained the experience of a lifetime. About an hour later, the wind died down, and for a while it became quiet and calm near the academy. Could it really be that it was all over? And Henry himself was in the same position as at the beginning, but now the element of the wind itself held him in the air, obeying his will. It seemed that the boy had managed to advance so far in his comprehension of abilities that all the initial levels of magic were now available to him. Then the spirit watched in surprise as the boy stood up and prepared to put the skills he had acquired into practice. And indeed, he suddenly extended his palm and swung it towards the stone bench, where he had begun to restore his skills an hour ago. Without straining his arms, with one light, sweeping movement, he smashed the stone bench into a pile of small stones that scattered all around. Now he only needed one palm to easily break stones and split hard alloys like a fragile crystal vase. This was a great happiness for the boy, because he again possessed the abilities that he had acquired with difficulty in his first